I think it's true that all human beings by nature desire to know. It's absolutely true. But on the other hand, because they're free, they don't want to be told anything. And any father will understand what I'm talking about, right?
Peter Schramm has been the Deputy Director or Director of the Ashbrook Center at Ashland University for the last 25 years. Next month, Peter is stepping down as the director, but fortunately will remain a classroom teacher. We caught up with Peter last week for a wide-ranging conversation about higher education and teaching styles today. Here's the first installment. Talk a little bit about a term you use a lot that I think you're almost unique in using, except for those of us who copy you, which is that a good education is a conversation.
Yeah.
Lecture, right?
Look, if I could really, in a few minutes discuss that and say something serious and true about it, I think I could be a very rich man, and I couldn't be happier than I am, but I could be a lot richer. So it's not possible. The conversation it really has to do with the point that human beings want to know, but they don't want to be told. The so-called lecture mode, I think, is dead. And I think the only place you're going to find it from now on, frankly, is online. So people can tape their lectures and have 10 million people see them instead of just 50 people or something like that. What is rare is a lecture is talking at someone. It's reading a book, like an lectern. It's literally just reading a book to someone, the way I presume Aquinas read, the Summa to his fellow monks, because it was the only copy of it at first. This conversation, we call it Socratic, dialectic, you make up all this stuff. A conversation is just two minds trying to think about the same thing for a limited period of time. It's never mind Kant's definition of marriage, but it's something like that, you see. And the good thing about that is it's really hard to do in principle, but it's easy to do in practice, because the mind that you're trying to have a conversation with is, Aristotle or Lincoln or Jefferson or something. In other words, not Schramm and Hayward and Smith and Jones as students. That becomes secondary in a way. So you're focusing on that one mind, you're trying to understand what it is saying, and you're asking it questions in almost a literal sense, and the text talks back to you through our own interpretation of it. And you do that with a student for a while, weeks to start with. It's very awkward. The way you do it is you say, read Xenophon's Education of Cyrus to my freshman, read page 1 through 15 or something like that, and we'll talk about it. Start talking about it tomorrow. And of course they hadn't done this before, so this is virgin thinking. And the first thing that happens is, I say, well, what did you think of it? Because I don't tell them what's in it. Well, that's silly. So I said, well, what struck you? What's the thing that struck you? These are 18-year-olds, relatively intelligent folk, given the universe in today's public education system, okay educated. And they don't get it. They look at the first 15 pages and they start talking about page 27. And some particular about, Cyrus's mother saying this, which we're not going to get there for 2 weeks. So they miss the big thing that's in front of them, and then I don't tell them what the big thing is. I just ask Bobby instead of Janet, and then we just go like that, and it goes on really for, I would say, 2-3 class sessions before finally they begin to look at the words and what they say. And, Xenophon says, gee, human beings are really hard to govern, while sheep and horses are easy to govern. Why is that? We're talking about the first paragraph, and consequently there is regime change, he says. The Democrats overthrow the aristocrats overthrow the monarchs, and they're just, human beings are unhappy with whoever is ruling them. Why is that? And we don't know, it's really hard, it's weird. But on the other hand, we looked at this one guy named Cyrus. Everybody wants to be ruled by him, even if they don't know him. And, and he's arguably a tyrant, but everybody wants to be ruled by him. So what we're going to do is we're going to study him. And what we have concluded is that it's not hard to rule human beings if you do it with knowledge. It takes us a week to 2 weeks to see that and say, well, what is that? What could that mean? And I said, geez, I don't know. What do you have to know? And then we read the rest of the book with that in mind. But it takes them 2 weeks. My point is, I'm sorry, I'm dragging this out. My point is that they begin to see that analysis, that taking the text apart and putting it back together. They do it on their own. It's a hands-on thing. They do it by themselves, you know, collectively as students. They talk to one another. For example, they don't raise hands. They just have conversations the way they might over a kitchen table to help one another. And they do it by themselves, and it becomes theirs. They don't take notes. I prevent them from taking notes, for example. Of course, no open computers or anything like that. Because I just want them to think. And then when somebody makes an argument about something, I'll do what law schools do, you know, because of course we lose the thread of an argument at some point because it goes in 7 different directions. And then I'll say, gosh, 5 minutes ago, you know, John Smith was making this argument. I don't remember what that was. Does anyone remember? And of course there's pause because, you know, and then, you know, hesitation and missed opportunities, and then finally someone says, well, no, what John was saying is if 1 is 2 and 2 is 3 and so on, then there's the, and then I say, that's right. So now let's pick that argument up. You see what I mean? So it's actually an exercise in thinking and an exercise in memory, not in some, you know, formulaic way, just really the way human beings have conversations with one another. That's what we do. And they like it. Because human beings like to know stuff, and they actually like to share things that they know. And they're capable of learning from one another, not just the so-called professor. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.